Good morning and welcome to the program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. Of course, the formal name for that is Viewpoint, appearing each Wednesday morning at 08:15 to 0900 hours. That program which Judy Busby and myself try real hard to bring you different guests from different walks of life, let you know what's going on here in Lincoln, Logan County. To that effect, let's get right down to business, Mrs. Busby. We have an excellent guest this morning who's giving us a lot of his time.
And a nice man and a busy man, and if I were in your shoes, I'd be nervous about today. Tracy Welch is the mayor of the governor of Lincoln, America.
Maybe he could use a mayor. I don't know.
At any rate,
she's on a trial run, Mr. Mayor.
At any rate, how do you deal with this weather we're supposed to get? And we may or may not. You know, they've been known to be wrong just like the rest of us.
Before the mayor answers that question, the old Bill would like to make a philosophical observation. And I mean this seriously. You know, each community has their small little fiefdom of elected officials, and each community benefits to the ability of those elected officials. And folks kind of poke and pry and raise hell once in a while with an elected official because they don't do what they think they ought to do, or they don't get their sidewalks cleaned or whatever. I want to tell you, folks, when you see your elected officials, the alderman, mayor, and those who are paid officials up there in the city hall, they're doing a good job for you. And so snap a little salute and say thanks for helping us. We'd be in, all communities would be in terrible shape if we didn't have the Tracy Welches and their city council members. And
they're not becoming millionaires in that position, are they?
In fact, they're out of their pocket quite a bit. So anyway, I just want to, now having said that, now, what the heck are you going to do about my sidewalks?
Well, we'll get that cleaned up for you as soon as we can, Bill.
You ask him a direct question. I'm going to shut up and let him answer the question.
Well, you know, when weather comes in, it depends on the type of weather, but like we're supposed to get a lot of rain. So that puts a lot of burden on the new wastewater treatment facility out there. In talking with the latest rain that we had and then all the water from the melting snow, you're talking about 30 million gallons of water that goes through there daily.
Inconceivable.
It is. Yep. And the guys that run that facility, including your grandson Andrew, are great people. They know what they're doing. They're on top of it. Equipment fails. It always does. And they know how to get things back online. So speaking to your point, Bill, it takes a team to keep the city running, and they're part of it.
Well, and they have to work as a team.
They do.
It's just imperative that they all have some people skills, because they need them not only to get along with one another and with the powers that be, that being yourself, sir.
I'm easygoing.
But also they have to deal with the public, and the public isn't always so easy to deal with.
Well, the public is very opinionated.
Yep.
And rightfully so. We're spending their money, and they've elected us to be good, responsible fiduciaries of their money, and we do the best we can in that respect. But everything that we do at the city is not done off the cuff. We have conversations about everything before we take action, and we take the city's interest in mind, the people's interest in mind, and any outlying impacts too, because things we do impact people that are not just in Lincoln.
Oh, that's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. We have all the wonderful smaller towns that surround Lincoln, and we end up being a consortium too.
We do.
Yes.
You know, being the county seat, we have a lot of responsibility. When I think about that, I think about tourism and economic development. I mean, the city of Lincoln puts in a bulk of the money towards tourism. I think it's around $180,000 a year, but that money is to go towards all cities in the county, not just Lincoln. So,
right.
Yeah, we have to think about others.
I'd like to reminisce just a minute about snow removal. I go back to the day when you could remove snow from the sidewalk with 1 horsepower. That is exactly 1 horsepower. somebody in their infinite wisdom created a V-shaped plow made out of 2x12s, and they'd have a couple of them nailed together, so you had a V-shape coming down the sidewalk, and pushes and a horse. It was a horse-drawn thing, and I suppose when they got to the curb, somebody had to get off and lift it up and put it over the curb so they could continue going. But that was a 1 horsepower snow removal.
Yeah, but that would be a heavy implement if you were using 2 2x12s.
Oh yeah, well,
I grew up in the lumber business. I know how big they are.
Yeah.
So, there again, not only locally, city, but we have our county and our state facilities. They're up for their challenges again, according to the weather report that I hear. Tomorrow's supposed to bring us a lot of extra snow and wind and so forth, drifting. So there again, they're going to be challenged, and somebody's going to complain they didn't get my driveway. But now let's get down to some serious. There's an elephant. There's an elephant trying. Go ahead, Judy. Okay, you want to say something?
Well, I
got to give her time.
Demands. I'm really interested. Periodically now the LDC has been closed for how many years now?
Well over 20.
And then every once in a while, up comes a rumor about, well, did you hear that somebody is interested in establishing something out there before the buildings all fall into decay completely? And now the latest one is that they're talking about juvenile detention.
Yeah, the Illinois Department of Juvenile Justice approached the city. It's been several months back. It was in 21, and they went through the process with the state to acquire some of the property out at LDC. So they now have a portion of that. It's the newer buildings. So if you go down State Street and Kickapoo, it's those that sit on the corner. And the idea is that there's a lot of juveniles that are institutionalized for one reason or another, and they're shipping them either north or south, and this will give a central location. So it keeps them closer to home. It's easier for families. I believe it's easier for the state to house them as well, but they bought the property, and so the city's role, we didn't really have a say.
Okay.
They didn't come to us and say, can we do it? They said, we're going to do it, but we want to be partners with you. So we talked with them. One of the big challenges we got out there is, because they got buildings on both sides of State Street, we have to figure out how to get the inmates safely across the street. So we have to create a safe environment. So we're working on an option that will close that off, that portion of the road, just the tail end, and then reroute traffic around the facility. So that's where we're at right now. They're designing it still, but I suspect they're going to be operational by 23.
Nothing's ever simple, is it?
It's never simple.
One little item comes up, and there are 12 of them that feed into it.
Yeah, and there's controversy about that topic. I actually got stopped this past weekend, and someone's like, why are you putting the criminals in my backyard? And
sure.
I had to explain, well, we're not putting the criminals in your backyard. And not all of the youth that's out there is bad, but you got to look at the positives as well. Despite the fact that who our new neighbor is going to be out there, it's going to create jobs. It's going to create people coming to town. They're going to spend money when they come to see their family members that are there. So we have to look at the positives as well. And it actually is a good use of some of that property that has sat there for years not being used at all.
And who knows if these are young people, and who knows what kind of life they have behind them. And maybe some of these kids can somehow find themselves.
Agreed.
Before there's an elephant tromping around in this room, and we're going to talk about that real quickly. But before we do that, we need to honor our sponsors. Right back live in the studios here at WLCN. The program, of course, is Viewpoint, appearing each Wednesday morning. Our guest this morning is Mr. Mayor, Mr. Tracy Welch, a young man who's made himself available. You have to elect him, of course, but he's willing to do the work. So put the harness on his shoulders and he won't disappoint you. Mr. Welch wanted to talk about snow removal for just a minute, so I pass the baton to you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, we were talking about the water and the wastewater, but with bad weather also comes snow, as we all know. And when you have 170 miles of road to clear and everybody wants it cleared immediately, it takes a lot of dedicated people to make that happen. And we have a very good streets and alley department led by Walt Landers. And those guys were out there, you know, in the wee hours of the morning when we were sleeping. Last snowstorm, I know they put in well over 40 plus hours of overtime.
Sure.
And they will be doing what they need to. They were out this past Sunday, salting roads because they were still a little icy. So, you know, before you give those guys a hard time in a snowstorm, just think about the commitment and the hours that they give the city of Lincoln.
And that creates a financial problem as well. As we said off air, you have a budget, and you work hard to work this budget out, and then you work hard to work with the budget. And the next thing you know, we've got 6 inches of snow that we hadn't counted on.
Yep.
And that shoots a heck out of the budget.
It does. So we budget for things like that, but as you had mentioned, you never know how much is going to fall.
Yeah.
So if we go over, then, you know, we have a great treasurer, Mr. Conzo, and he'll walk us through the appropriations process to shift money and reallocate where we legally can to cover those expenses. So
Now, if we try to follow up what's going on in the city government, and I think most of us do, you're grappling with a new problem now, and this is the elephant that I wanted to refer to just earlier in the program this morning. Gaming devices in the various places. Now, you're working with that problem right now. That's a two-edged sword. It's kind of like prohibition. That's a two-edged sword. People can handle it, and some people can't handle it. And so let's get down to the nuts and bolts of your gaming problem, Mr. Mayor.
So when I came on as the acting mayor and when I was an alderman, we knew that there was a lot of gaming in Lincoln. But at the time, it was a little controlled in the fact that you have to have a liquor license to get gaming licenses.
And there are a limited number of liquor licenses,
Well, there
is that
were.
right?
There were.
Fix that.
The council removed the cap because they didn't want to hinder growth, economic growth.
Okay.
So they removed the cap, and then there was also a percentage that said if you have gaming, you have to have a certain percentage from things other than gaming in your business. Mm-hmm. So you had to sell beer, or you had to sell food, or something like that. Well,
Magazines.
Yeah, that whatever you want to do. And that went away with the cap. And so after that happened, we knew we would see some growth, which is why the cap was removed. What we didn't expect was the amount of growth. And to date, I actually pulled...
Growth means receipts in gaming. Let's define growth for a minute. You're talking about the receipts the city receives in gaming licenses and also the percentage of the gaming. Am I correct in that?
You are, sir. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So the revenue has gone up. And when Mr. Conzo gives us our report every month, you know, he says so with a smile on his face because he likes to find revenue for the city, which we all should be doing. But also that you have to have more terminals in town to get that revenue.
Yeah.
And so I looked at the report today, and we're at 30 establishments with roughly 180 terminals in town right now. We've already approved some additional ones that are not online. But with that 180, there was $9 million of gross or net income from those machines. The city made roughly $455 after all was said and done on taxes, $455,000. That's
Which
our
is nice income for the city.
It is, but to put it into perspective, we're 5% of all of the revenue, and we got $455,000.
Now that's interesting.
Yeah,
That's only 5% of your revenue.
of the taxable revenue.
Notwithstanding the fact that's a pretty substantial figure.
It is, and so then you have to get back to when is enough enough?
Yeah.
And
when is enough, sir?
Well, I made that decision here recently, and it's, you know, hasn't been a popular one in some circles, but that's okay because my signature goes on those licenses. But when the Liquor Commission and I were meeting, we looked at the number of terminals, and when we hit 240 that have already been approved, I decided I'm not signing anymore. And we've decided, we announced this last night, that until those numbers come down under 200, I won't be signing any more licenses for video gaming. You can still come get a liquor license, but you just can't get the gaming with it.
Well, I'm sure in the minds of various people, you're darned if you do and darned if you don't. I applaud your decision personally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think it kind of cheapens the community as you drive down the streets and you see gaming. I don't think if I were a young couple coming here from big city someplace and looking for a wonderful place to raise your family, Bill and I know that, Jim knows that, because we all did it.
Yep.
And we're darn grateful for it. But I'd look at all that and I'd think, well, what the hey is their standard?
648-5510. This is your opportunity to ask a question or make your opinions known of our Mayor, Tracy Welch. Mind you now, even though he ran for office, it's a voluntary thing, so be nice to him or we'll put you in jail. No, seriously, if you have a BITCH, I didn't say the word, Jim, coming, feel free to vent it, but be nice, be pleasant, and be respectful. 648-5510. And Tracy Welch, and he'll talk to you about this gaming problem. I think he made the right decision, Judith Kay. At some point in time, enough's enough. Mm-hmm. And you have to dig your heels in somewhere. Now, somebody's not going to like that.
Well, and I've had plenty of conversations with various people about this, but in talking with Mr. Conzo, he enjoys the revenue, and we all do, because we can put that revenue back into things like roads, etc. But our job and our responsibility as elected officials sometimes isn't pleasant, and we have to balance the benefits versus the things that could impact us. And the image, as Judy had mentioned, that gets portrayed by that much gaming on our main drags of Lincoln when people come to town is not so pleasant. I actually had a friend come home who hadn't been here for quite a while, decades, and he was on his way to Germany. He's in the military. And he called me up as his family came home to visit, and he said, "Tracy, I love Lincoln." He goes, "But I got to tell you," he goes, "it's starting to look like Little Vegas." And when he gave me that unsolicited feedback, it kind of reiterated what I had been feeling all along, and so that type of feedback is what made me make the decision I did.
Well, you're going to have people on both sides of the fences, as always, Some who think we need more, some who think maybe we don't need more.
Well, the word addiction applies here, and addiction is a terrible disease, and it is exactly that, whether it's booze or whether it's gambling or other ladies or whatever. An addiction isn't an addiction. And nobody can. There's no way to control that by regulations. Because if a guy's addicted, the poor guy's addicted, whatever, or the lady, as the case may be.
And that's a touchy subject too, is because it's your money. You worked hard to earn it.
Sure.
And I think you should be able to spend your money the way that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we just have to balance out the needs of the city and ensure that Lincoln becomes a marketable place. We hear all the time, we'd like a new this, we'd like a new that. Well, the only way to make that happen is when your population goes up.
Yeah, right.
So if you don't make your town inviting, then your population will not grow up.
That's an interesting observation. A friend of yours made this. He'd been away and came back, and that's the thought that went through his mind. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I took his feedback to heart, because he actually is a military commander, and he's been in charge of whole garrisons, so he understands, how you have to balance things out. So, I weighed a lot on that feedback that he provided. But, the other part to this video gaming is that the governor recently passed a bill that allowed non-home rule, which is what we are, to raise the fees from $25 per machine to $250 per machine.
Well, that's quite a bump.
It is, and the Liquor Commission and it seems the city council has an appetite to do that. So that would take our revenue from like $6,000 a year on the fees to $60,000. So when that happened, we brought that forward as a proposal. Some of the establishments that have the machines were not so happy
Of course.
that we were doing that. They're worried about the impacts to their revenue.
Sure.
And we understand that completely, and we're not trying to hurt the businesses that we have. So in looking through it now, it seems that fee can be split between them, the establishment, and the people that own the terminal. So it helps offset some of the costs. But then Alderman Hopeful, you speak about the council. We have a really, really good council that thinks outside the box, and you have to. So the proposal brought forward last night was, okay, if we're going to take this additional tax, let's give the people some confidence that we're going to use it wisely. So that, and then the additional revenue that we will see when those other 40 terminals come online, we're going to take 50% of our revenue plus the 60% fees, and we're going to put it into roads and alleys. So we're constantly trying to grow that pot. We're at $500,000 a year now. That only covers about 3 miles of road a year.
Yeah,
So-
roads are pricey piece of proposition, aren't they?
They are. And last time we spoke, I think I told you guys it'd take 59 years at our current rate to do all the roads in Lincoln.
Oofta.
So we're constantly trying to grow that budgeted amount so that we can reduce that time, get better quality roads for the people. So when people complain about roads, we hear them. They may
Well, I'm
not
sure
think
you
we do,
do.
but we do hear them.
Well, you ride on the same roads we do.
Absolutely.
There is, I don't think there's a street in town that doesn't need some sort of attention. But long range, that's going to take a lot of long range planning. Are there grants out there available for the city to seek to help us with that road problem?
There are, and that's one of the things that we've been focusing on a lot is trying to identify grants that could help us for a number of purposes in Lincoln, not just roads. So we have an administrative assistant position. It's been vacant for a little bit, and we just posted that yesterday. So once that person gets in and gets kind of acclimated, that's going to be their first task, is to get up to speed with the grants we have, and then help us start looking for additional grant funding.
As I understand
That's
it,
an
kind
art.
of writing for grants
It is.
is an art in and of itself, as so I understand. And if you can get somebody who's versed in the writing of grants and the applications, boy, that's a leg up.
It would be wonderful. Not everybody has that skill set.
No.
So we're willing to put them through training if we have to, connect them with the right people. You guys have had Andrea Runge from LEAD on here, I know. Andrea is great with grants. Her and I work together a lot. We actually meet every month to talk about economic development, and
That whole grant business is an art, though.
Oh, it is.
648-5510. This our conversation this morning ought to make you realize that they're not just sitting up there beside their desk arguing about dogs and cats and the number of pigs you can have in town. Sophisticated, complicated conversations go on up there, and so we need to doff our hat in their direction as you meet them on the street, or buy them a cup of coffee, or if you want to slip in there somewhere, I'll pay for the beer. Be nice to them. They're out there working for you. The roads, Mr. Mayor. You have a long-range committee working on those. You just can't solve our road problem in the city of Lincoln in a couple of years' time. That won't work. We don't have that kind of money.
we don't. It would take about $30 million to dump into our roads to get all of our roads like up to par in a short amount of time. And as you know, that's not going to happen.
No.
And so what we have to do is increase that budget amount every year, as long as our budget can support it, and continue to, at least in my opinion, never go backwards, always go forward on that budgeted amount. We don't ever want to say, let's take some money out of roads to do this. My question is, can we do without that? Because roads are more important. And so that's the constant struggle we have. As I said, 170-mile road, and the materials, as you know, especially during COVID, have gone up. So we got 3 miles last year. Are we going to get 3 miles this year? We don't know. So
That's not likely.
it's not. And we have software and programs that Mr. Landers uses every year to gauge the status of our roads, the quality, which targets that we need to hit. He brings them to the council decides yes or no, and then we go forward. And that's the approach we use right now. It seems to work well, but in the eyes of the public, they don't understand that stuff going on in the back, and they're like, well, my road is horrible. And I sympathize and say, I understand, your road is horrible and needs attention, but this road over here needs more attention, and so we're going to have to ask you to be patient a little longer.
The problem with us citizens is the fact that we don't think about everybody has the same problems that we have on our block, you know?
Yep.
And we kind of forget that, and then there's you up at the top of the pyramid trying to placate everybody. It's got to be darn hard.
I've learned in this position that a lot of times we can't solve the problems immediately, but people want to be heard. Because there's this stigma that I'm afraid to go to City Hall. I don't want to talk to people at City Hall. They don't care about what we care about. I've always been an open book. I've got 2 email addresses. I've got 2 phone numbers. I've got an online system where you can book time with me and schedule time with me. I'm more available than I ever have been. And so if you can't get time with me, then it's probably because your schedule is complicated, not mine. Yeah. And my schedule is complicated because I'm balancing the city responsibilities, my real job responsibilities, and my personal responsibilities. But I got into politics to help people, and that's a priority of mine. So if you want time for me, I will meet you anywhere. You can come to my office. I'll do it on a phone call. I'll do it on a Zoom call. I will make time for people.
Well, bless your heart. And you did for us today, and I say thank you for that. Bye, George.
I love you guys. I thank you for having me on, and I appreciate it.
Well, along comes something like this weather forecast. Mm-hmm. Now, that's got to make you think, oofta. Well, that's a Norwegian word. You might want to remember it. It's a very good word.
I think I know where you're going with that. It does. We've already had conversations about it. And streets and alleys and wastewater, they're already prepared for what may come. So now we just sit back and wait and see what Mother Nature brings us.
Yeah, and there's no way to know until it's all said and done. And then you can say, well, we didn't have 6 inches of snow. We had 2.
Now, this is blindsiding you, Mr. Mayor. And I don't mean to do it in that manner, but I guess I'm going to have to if we're going to get the question out here. As we sit here in the studios this morning at WLCN, what would you say that the council would say is our most pressing problem right now? Don't say money, because we all know that.
You're right. We have a lot of issues, and I think some are more transparent than others. Mm-hmm. The number one is we always have to be responsible with people's money without increasing taxes. Mm-hmm. That's the challenge. From my experience, I think on top of roads, which is one of our big items that we always have to be aware of, is our sewer. Mm-hmm. And our sewer is, as you know, the system is aged, in some places 100 years old. Mm-hmm. And when you have clay tiles that are 100 years old, they deteriorate. Then they collapse, and then people have sewage back up into their systems. So one of the big rocks that we're working on is how can we address that problem and be mindful of the people that use that system. And so we got some ideas that they're kind of half-baked right now, but I'll be releasing those to the council soon. And I think that will at least help people move in the right direction. But it's going to take some initiative of the people as well to protect their interests, because the city, if we had to be responsible for the 4,500 homes and all of their sewer lines, we'd go bankrupt. So, and on average, I constantly push this. There are insurance companies out there. American Water Resources is one of them. I pay $10 a month, and it protects my sewer line and my water line. If I have a collapse, they come in. Now I pay $120 a year. To put it into perspective, when your sewer line collapses, in most cases, you have to pay to tap into the new sewer or the sewer line that's under the road, which means you're now tearing up road. Mm-hmm. And then, so you have to pay to put the road back to where it was. And those bills on average right now are about $12,500.
Ouch.
I saw one gentleman at the end of 9th Street, felt so sorry for him. But the ordinances are written the way they are. His bill was $20,000
Oh my.
to repair a sewer line. So I can't say it enough. I encourage people, get insurance on your water or your sewer and your water. You can't see underground, but I assure you from what I know, in most places, they're older.
Now that's kind of out of sight, out of mind thought, you know.
Keeps you up.
You just don't think about that, but then here suddenly you're hit with that. Just 1 minute. I have a question from a caller here, sir. Is there anywhere to recycle glass now since the bottle factory is closed? That was pretty convenient, by the way. You could drive up there to the bottle factory and dump them in a container there, and now the place is closed. Do you know of any facilities?
The only way that I know that you can get rid of your glass recycling is by working with the local provider, which happens to be right now Area Disposal. They have a recycling tote that you can get. It's the ones with the orange lid, and you can put your glass recycling in there. So
Well, that's easy enough.
yeah.
You know, you mentioned Mr. Conso.
There's a call, Bill.
We have a caller here. 1 minute. Here you are, Judith K. All right, go right ahead, please, caller.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes, go right ahead, please.
Okay, I had to turn my radio off. I need to ask the mayor if you have a street committee in Lincoln. I have had a long time problem with something in the 800 block on Woodlawn Road, and I have given up. But I thought if you have a street committee there, maybe they could do something. But how could I write to your street committee?
So we don't have a committee per se just for streets and alleys, but when these topics come up, then the alderman, myself, will work with Walt Landers and Andrew Bounds, because sometimes when you're dealing with streets, you have to think about the infrastructure below the street to make sure you're not impacting anything. And if it's Woodlawn, then that's a state route, and so we have to get IDOT involved because they maintain that. But I can, if you would send me your information, or at least work with Mr. Ash and provide your phone number, I can call you afterwards and we can get all of your information and get somebody to look at your issue.
Okay. Well, give me that. I would like to write to you, and then I would be glad to have them talk to me, but I will not be home for the next hour and a half after you go off the air.
Well, if you'll get your number to Mr. Ash, then the mayor will make sure he gets in contact with you. I'm not going to tell you it's going to be in the immediate hour, but I promise you he will get in touch with you.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Thank you very much for your call. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
You know, I started to mention for the caller, and we appreciate the young lady calling in. She's got a problem that bothers her, and that's what you're here to do. Try to help. We can't say we can't cover all bases, but we can try. I started to mention Mr. Conso. Before him, we had an excellent. Douglas Plotner was an excellent city treasurer, and we have an outstanding.
We have another call.
We have another phone call. All right, hang on a minute, please. They're coming into loses.
We got to get our technology.
Go right ahead, please. Go right ahead, caller.
Yes, I had a question for the mayor. First of all, I think he's doing a great job, but I was just kind of curious. I hadn't heard much about the 5th Street Road project. Where's that at right now?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for the kind words. 5th Street Road is a project we're obviously still working on. We are down to 2 parcels that we need to acquire out there, and they've been a little bit more unique than the others. And so, one, we've already got a commitment on. We just need to get some documentation from their legal department and get that wrapped up. The other one, it's an actual parcel that is kind of connected by multiple owners. And so I think we're close to getting that wrapped up. And my goal would be to have all this wrapped up by March or April. And then if we can do that, then we'll get on what's called a letting schedule for IDOT, and then that will put us on their radar to then start working on getting ready for, breaking ground and the construction aspect of it. Then the other piece to that is we at the city council then have to have conversations about how we're going to pay for this. But I assure you, it's a priority. It's been going on for way too long, and we, just like you, would like to see that road fixed.
I hope that answers your call, sir.
Sure does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we were talking about your city employees. We have a great city clerk and a guy with an eagle eye is our treasurer, and he kind of watches things, and you say he smiles when he can tell you good reports. So how's that working here budget-wise? You work real hard to establish a budget, and then the first thing you know, the floodgates open up, and you have out extra money, the budget goes shot. And that's a difficult matter to work with.
It
and
is.
that happens every week up there.
Yeah, we have a healthy budget, and that is a lot in part to do with Treasurer Conzo. He's much like, a very strict spouse in that you say, we'd like to do this.
You know about that.
Yeah, then we have to ask the question, can we afford it?
Yeah.
And then he'll tell us, well, I think we could maybe move some funds from over to here. Sometimes he's like, that's going to be a tough one. And they're not all easy answers, but like, for instance, the caller with Fifth Street Road, that's going to be one of those that he says that's going to be a tough one, because that one's going to be a couple $1 million. And when we get into that kind of money, then we're looking at issuing general obligation bonds to pay for those, and then we have to do a payback period. If I'm a betting man, I suspect that's the direction that's going to go. But he keeps us on our toes, and he tells us no and he tells us yes. And that's what I love about him is it's not all rainbow and sunshine.
No, it's not. Nothing is. But thank you, God, for sending us people like you and like him who are willing to put the time and effort into things that you are willing to do. If they made me in charge of these kinds of things, it'd be just a mell of a hess.
Well, thank you. I love Lincoln. My kids grew up here. I grew up here. My parents grew up here. And so many family and friends and loved ones. And really, I got into it. I say this all the time, and it's true. I got into politics to help people. The money, I will assure you, nobody at City Hall is getting rich. The aldermen, our pays are transparent. Aldermen get, after taxes, about $120 a month. And you wouldn't believe some of the commitments they have. The mayor,
earn every nickel's worth of that.
yeah,
for
and
sure.
I get about $800 or $900 a month, but I guarantee you, I put in 40 hours a week on top of my other commitments. I have a phone that I actually sleep with.
That's a
I get
mistake,
calls at 2 or 3 in the morning.
That's a mistake. You owe yourself some downtime. May I make a suggestion? Turn that damn phone off. You're entitled to some sleep.
Well, I hear you, Bill, but the city is a breathing thing, and it operates 24/7. And unfortunately, when we have like incidents with police or fires in the middle of the night, not all cases do they need my help. But from an awareness standpoint, I don't want to wake up in the morning getting calls from Channel 20 News about something that happened that I know nothing about, and so that's kind of a self-inflicted wound, I guess I should say. But I don't need to tell you how to do your job, but I want to know what's going on so I can speak to it.
Yeah.
That's all I ask.
Well, because the buck stops with you.
Ultimately, yes.
I hope your taxpayers, when described as voters, will keep that in mind next time around. Not all communities, and this is a fairly decent-sized community, not all communities have the benefit of having people who are statesmen as well as politicians, and there's a difference, by the way. Statesmen and politicians, there's a whale of a difference. So I think the taxpayers should be very appreciative of the kind of government they're getting for the amount of money they're expending. I didn't realize that the net income is as small as it is. So that's kind of a wake-up call. Final chance, 648-5510. Mr. Tracy Welch, our manager or mayor of our city services, has done us a favor. Tracy, we appreciate you coming up, young man.
Thank you very much. Glad to be on any time.